Hey everyone, welcome back. Riley and Matthew here at the Concealed Carry Expo. Another session, another interview with a fantastic guest. We have Tony Lambraia from UTM, or Ultimate Training Munitions Worldwide. Great guy, great company. They make some fantastic product. I just mentioned a few minutes ago as we were wrapping up the last session that if you're here at the show or if you're going to be attending the show, you've got to go on down from our broadcast booth or just down the aisle here a little ways. You got to go check out their booth and see everything that Tony and UTM has to offer. Tony, welcome back. You've been on the podcast before. We've done some videos and things with you in the past. We're glad to have you again and talk about some training. And I think we were just talking a minute ago. Let's touch on some decision making, as it relates to the use of force, and also what was the other thing too? I already forgot.
Well, you got the training scars, you got the use of force, decision making. A lot of times people are popping rounds on targets and paper and stuff. So we just want to talk a little bit about that part of the training.
Yeah, exactly. So rather than popping, just rounds at a target. In fact, we were on the demo stage yesterday, and I think I said something about that effect, about training with a purpose. Right. Introducing decision making, threat recognition. I think that was what we were actually just talking about a minute ago. So I'm curious, the UTM, philosophy of things. How do you incorporate into training with everything you do, those aspects?
Yeah, it's really important is that when people think about threat recognition, even with the UTM system, they only think about scenario training. They think that that's the only thing that they can actually expose. And what we try and do is we incorporate it even into our skill builders. So something as simple as putting numbers on a target, colors on a target, or whatever it is, you can do that, and a lot of people will. But what we'll do is we'll have the recognition of the number or the color, but we'll also have maybe a C on it where we're saying challenge. Or, what are you doing in my house? Let me see your hands. Whatever it is that is appropriate for that particular situation, and you're not allowed to shoot that target. But then we'll call a threat, whereas the guy, okay, now he went for a gun, and now you go ahead and engage. So it makes them process through. They have to process numbers. They have to process letters, which is just really about the intellect, using your intellect. And then as they start to do that, then we'll call a threat or not a threat. And then it gives them right from the beginning of the skill builders all the way to the scenarios, because a lot of times you get the scenarios and people aren't really prepared for it, so you're not giving them enough skills to be successful. And even if you're doing skill builders and you're teaching them how to shoot fast and, reload and move and all that stuff, but then the only time they get to do decision making is when they're in a full-blown scenario. They're not prepared. They're not ready for it. And you don't want to set people up for failure. You want to make them successful so that you can build their confidence and understand a little bit more. And in this day and age, threat recognition is absolutely critical. You get into a situation, there's active shooters all over the place, and there are people running everywhere, and the stress that's through the roof for any shooter. Right, and you're a responsible gun holder, and you're out there running around. You're going to have to make a decision at some point. Right. And if you're not prepared, it could be catastrophic.
Now, a lot of instructors will sometimes have students, they'll incorporate math, for instance, math problems or something. Do you do anything like that at all?
We'll do that occasionally, put something on there, but, I really don't get that complex with it. We try and put, 2 or 3 digit numbers sometimes and, different letters and, work from there. Yeah. What's really interesting, and I'm not saying that it's bad, but there are a lot of no-shoot targets out there, and that was kind of like a pet peeve of mine. Some of them I don't like, and I'll tell you why I don't like the no-shoot targets, is because they'll have a guy with a hoodie on, bent over, holding an umbrella, and pointing at the guy with a mean face on, and it'll be behind a door. And then you'll turn the door, and then all of a sudden there's that target. And so you engage the target, and they go, oh, sorry, that was a no-shoot. He had an umbrella. Well, you know what?
But there was a lot of other things about that guy that indicated threat, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if you're going to do that kind of training, it has to be consistent, If a guy's, his facial recognition, you're looking at his facial features, you're looking at his hands, you're looking at all the totality of everything that's going on. Now it makes sense. No shoot. Okay, granted, that's good to go. Right. But if you just, you got a guy 1 minute he's holding an umbrella, the next minute you put a rifle in his hand, next minute he's got a Coke bottle in his hand. I mean, those are not necessarily, teaching people the right way to assess.
It's not just an object, for instance, that says this is a threat. I mean, it can be.
That's right.
Obviously, if you can recognize gun or knife, or but exactly, it's the totality of what you're perceiving, what you see. Just how an example of just how important it is, obviously, to understand the idea of threat recognition. As far as, I mean, do we see mistakes made? Yeah, we see mistakes made. Like, just earlier this year, there was that cop, was in Minnesota, I think it was, shot just a lady, a homeowner that was in the area of a situation. He'd been called there to the scene, and I don't know what went down there, but to me that says didn't recognize that she was not a threat, because it sounds like from all accounts that she didn't really look like a threat. So I like what you said, by the way, Tony, as far as you'll use a little bit more complex numbers sometimes, and I noticed that going through your shoot house in at what was it? Were we at SHOT Show the last time? Yeah. And you got like 73 and 81 and 22, which when we start getting under stress, our brains, like, we want to make things a lot simpler, if we can. And it's so much easier to recognize a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 7, but you start introducing those complex numbers.
Absolutely. Sometimes
you'll say, hey, 43, and someone just sees the 3 and 73, and they shoot 73 instead of 43.
Yep. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, and then you start to add in another component of that where they have to think through and they have to do 360 degrees. Now it changes the whole dynamic. We do a very simple, everybody does a box drill, right? So, where you're moving forward to the one spot, and then you move to the cross, and you do your spots from there. Then what we do is we turn them into actual pieces of cover. And what we'll do is we'll have numbers and targets all the way around the whole box. And at some point or another, you may be facing downrange, at one moment, and then I'll call 73, and now you have to change. So you have to go on the other side of the cover and now work cover from the other dynamic. And then all of a sudden the threat will change, and you have to, engage the other side. So, life is 360 degrees. It's not, linear. It's not a 90, on a range, right?
Yeah.
And then so you put the complex piece of it in it. Now you start putting decision-making targets in there. Now they have to assess the number, plus they have to assess whether or not they have to shoot. Plus they have to assess 360 degrees. Now it starts to become realistic to what the environment is going to really be. And if it's ever involved in that shooting situation, that's the stress level.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to assess that.
Yeah, and I think you touch on two things that are really important and lacking in a lot of training is threat assessment and adapting or managing your response, right? So a lot of people think, we train with a beep, that's our go sign, right? But in a real fight, you're not going to get a beep. You're going to have to pick up on cues, or you're going to have to wait until you see a weapon produced or something like that. So the way you respond is completely different than a lot of the ways we train. And then we're, obviously because of a two-dimensional or a range that is one-directional,
right,
you can only train so much, right? And like you said, it's a 360 environment. And with UTM and your munitions, now you can actually do what we want to actually train for, rather than, well, in real life we would have done it this way,
right,
but we're going to train this way because of safety. Now it's a safe, we're still being safe, but we're able to do it in a 360 degree method and apply those skills the way they should be applied, not just talk about them in real life scenarios. That's cool. How we would do it. So I think that's critical and so important.
Yeah. The other part of that too is that what you touched on is that there's a lot of training scars that are created, right? So your judgment is absolutely critical, and we incorporate that in everything that we're doing. But there's a lot of training scars that are created. I mean, we're doing a very basic drill right down the booth over here. It's a cover drill. But how many people stick their gun way past cover? And they're just, you say to them, back up, back up, back up, still picking their gun past cover. Back up, back up. It's a range scar because you can't shoot the barricade. So you have to have your gun, 6 inches in front of the barricade. So they're just so used to doing that. Now you put the 360 in it, and now you have to make them flip from one side of the barricade to the other side of the barricade, and now they're sucked up to the barricade again. Now you start putting the decision making. I mean, you start putting it all together, and people they realize how unprepared they really are from a training perspective for
even
a
good
360.
Shooters.
Even good shooters.
Because it's a different skill.
It absolutely is. You have to process through. You have to make decisions. You have to understand, which side you're supposed to be on. You have to process where the threats are. You have to process whether it is a threat and whether it isn't a threat. So, it just gives them so much more, training, and it's safe. So if somebody makes a mistake, nobody's going to die, right?
Yeah.
You get a little rubber band snapping, owie, and then you move on, right?
Yeah.
So it actually gives them a lot of ability to do things that they normally couldn't. But Again, we go back to that threat recognition, though. The other part of the training is initially you start out, and we do that, the shoot, no shoot target stuff with, what we just talked about. But you'll see somebody, they'll shoot, and then right away they'll go, they can just tell, they messed it up. And then you get them back in again, and it takes 3 or 4 times to go through it where you really start the process. And then once they do that, then we change it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's just like clearing a corner in a house, right? When you're cops, you go in the house and, you run the house when you're doing a training and you say, oh, you missed your corner. So the next time you go in that house, what do? You clear that corner, right? But if we change the corner around, or if we change the dynamic of the house, to test whether or not you actually understood it, or you're just doing it because I told you to do
understood
it.
the principle or the concept as opposed to just memorizing a routine.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so what happened, people get so used to, even good shooters get used to courses of fire, right? Here's your course of fire. This is what you're going to do. Here's your movement. This is what I want you to take care of, right? So they get good at it. They do it 5 or 6 times, and now they know exactly what the drill is. I know 33 is over here as a challenge target. I know 55 over there is a challenge target. 7 is good. They got a good memory. They're on it, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you got to change it. You got to give them something else. You got to throw another complex skill in there, and then make them start thinking through and continuously challenge them as push them.
Yep. That's great stuff, man. Now, one thing we talked on the at SHOT Show, actually, when we recorded the podcast interview with you, we touched a little bit on the importance of kind of the debrief aspect. When you're doing training like this, scenario-based or even force-on-force, because what you just said a moment ago is you talked about an example where maybe someone makes a mistake, as far as failing to clear a corner properly or whatever. Can you I think that was just really valuable content as far as viewers understanding how important it is that we actually learn something from these drills or whatever that we're going through, scenarios.
Yeah, and I think the last time we were together, I think we spoke a little bit about scenario training as a whole, and how sometimes what happens is people are thrown in scenarios. They're not necessarily very successful, and then somebody looks at them and goes, "Listen, you see, you need more training. You probably would die." That's the after action. That's the debrief. They're like, okay, well, you went to this ATM machine and, you didn't pay attention. You should have watched everything in your peripheral vision. The guy snuck up behind you and he shot you twice. It wasn't very good. Well, that doesn't help, And if you say, well, you should have been looking around, that doesn't even help. What you have to do is you have to go back and break down the individual skills, and you have to give them the tools to make sure that works, right? And so what we do is if we're going to build a scenario, we pick like 3, maximum 4 skills that are going to be incorporated into that scenario, right? And so we reverse engineer from there. I say, okay, these 4 skills will make you successful in this scenario. Now, forget the scenario. Let's train individually on each one of those skills building up to the scenario. Now, once I train you on those 4 skills, now I put you in the scenario. I let you run it a couple of times, see, right? And I only critique you on the 3 or 4 skills that I taught you, right? Now, if I see that you're really not performing well, you're still having a problem, I identify which skills in that scenario you're doing poorly on, and we go back and we drill those again. And then we go back and do the scenario. Now, that's actually completing the loop so that you're getting good training, you're getting skills training, you're getting scenario training. Now you're starting to put it together. If you just come in and say, okay, guys, we got 2 hours together. Here's a couple of guns. Here's some UTM stuff. All right, ready, set, go. And you show them how bad they are. It's like the old police days, right? Everybody died when you went into a building entry, right? They had 3 instructors, guys rappelling out of the ceiling, and everybody died. Right?
The drill was set up for you to lose. There's no way you could win it.
Exactly.
And what do you learn from that?
Yeah, you can die. That's then I don't. Hopefully, that's not the lesson that you wanted to learn, right? But, yeah, so that's, and it goes back to the after action as well. So what will happen is that somebody does a scenario, and instead of debriefing on the actual skills, they'll either, debrief on something completely different that they didn't prepare them for, or they'll go off on tangents, or they'll, hey, you'll ask the role player, well, what did you see? Well, they ask the student, what did you see? What did you see? And everybody starts fishing for stuff to say, and there's really no value to it. Yeah. So to me, be very concise, have your plan ahead of time, plan your scenarios out, and make sure that you're preparing them well to get to that. Yeah. And that goes for any training, though. Listen, if you were a basketball player and you would break down the individual skills of dribbling and shooting, foul shots, and whatever it is. If you're a baseball player, you're going to work on your swing. You're going to work on your catching. You can equate it to any sport ever, right? And there is a certain amount of stress inoculation and all those other things in those things. So break down the skills, get really good at them, and then when it's game time, which is the scenario, then you perform. After the scenario is over with, just like game time, you evaluate your game time performance, and then you look at what skills you need to go back and work on.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. It's been being done forever. The only thing is a lot of people just, are not following through that circle and completing it.
Yeah, that's great. I suspect that many folks, particularly civilians, don't fully understand what is available to them as civilians from UTM. Can you maybe go through what you have available that is even available for civilians to purchase, and also maybe what some of the training opportunities are, like as far as where folks might find some training, some quality training, as we've just been discussing?
Yeah, and what we're doing now is we're offering the conversion kits for both pistols and also rifle kits. The conversion kits, give them the ability to either shoot our blanks, our silent blanks and our battlefield blanks, which, there's a lot of uses for that training I won't go into right now. And then we also have our marking rounds that'll mark the target. So if you want to do force on target stuff.
Right. Now, just real quick though, I know you didn't want to go into it, but your standard blanks or training blanks just are going to reciprocate the action of the firearm, right? So we have your battlefield blanks.
The noise
are going to give you a pop or a bang.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we have the two are silent blanks. Silent blanks completely quiet, no emissions, no gas, nothing coming out of the gun, but it'll cycle the weapon.
Yeah.
You'll get slide lock back. You can do your reloads. You can do a whole bunch of stuff
and feel realistic.
Exactly. Totally realistic. I mean, it's cycling exactly the same. And then the battlefield's going to give them that report. It's going to give them that loud bang. Now, if you were doing drills, if you wanted to start the practice and you never did a seated draw, right, as an example, or inside of a vehicle, and you don't have some place that you can actually shoot projectiles, you could actually use the silent blanks in your vehicle to actually practice drawing from your purse, drawing from a concealed position, and pull the trigger, because there's no projectile. The only thing that's happening is the gun is cycling. So now you're actually getting a chance to see how does it feel to draw. If somebody's trying to carjack and you actually have to get your gun out, somebody's trying to pull you out of the vehicle, how do you actually get to your weapon? So you can do those things because there's no standoff and it's completely safe. So the blanks have a huge, huge value, really, a lot more than people would actually understand initially. And once they see it once or twice, then it opens up, a whole gamut of training. And then the marking rounds, we sell the marking rounds now into the commercial market, mostly for force on target. We say that you should go to a training organization. We have probably 300 training organizations throughout the United States that use UTM right now. And we have certification courses where we actually train trainers. We very rarely do end user courses. We only train instructors. Yeah. And we teach them, how to actually implement the UTM system. And I say system because it's not just the rounds. It's how to use it. You can have the best technology in the world. You can have the best training tool in the world. But if you don't understand the methodology of how to use it, it's not going to help you. It actually could hurt you. So we have training organizations, and we just set up a brand new thing. I don't think you know this from the last time we spoke. And what I'm doing is I'm going around the country right now and setting up regions where we're going to have what we call UTAs, UTM Training Affiliates. And the training affiliates, I'm actually going out and I'm spending several weeks with them, training their instructors, and they're going to be putting out UTM courses. They're going to be doing level 1s, level 2s, level 3s for civilian market.
That's great.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's going to it goes to the building block. We don't want people to come in day one and just throw them into a bunch of scenarios that are complex. So it's going to be a building block. They're going to start off with skill builders. They're going to work the force on role player. The next time they come back, they're going to be working more force on force. Then when they get to the last one, then they're going to be tested. They're going to be running through scenarios. They're going to go full all out. So it's really going to be more dynamic and a building approach to it.
Awesome.
So we got a lot more training coming.
Great. Well, this is exciting, and I'm excited to hear that, by the way. So I might want to pick your brain and visit with you some more about that offline sometime. Exciting stuff from UTM, guys. Go check them out. What's the website?
It's UTM Worldwide.
Yep, .com.
.com.
Yep. So go check out UTMWorldwide.com if you're not able to be here at the show, or definitely go on down to the booth, check them out, go through a couple of their little scenarios. Great stuff, great training products, and super smart dudes behind it that really get the importance of training and training in the right way. So thank you, Tony, for your time today. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Definitely be catching up.
Thanks
with
for
you
having me, guys.